You know, I think most of us assume the goal of a courtroom is, well, simple, get to the truth.
Yeah, just lay out every single fact.
Exactly. Show every piece of evidence and just, let the jury sort it all out. But looking at the sources on Federal Rule of Evidence 403 for this deep dive, that's not really how the system works at all, is it?
Not at all. I mean, if you think about rules 401 and 402, those are the open doors. They basically say, if it's relevant, bring it in. Rule 403 is the bouncer. It's the one rule that's specifically designed to stop the truth, or at least parts of it, from ever even reaching the jury.
And that's the real tension here, isn't it? We're looking at how a judge can decide to hide relevant facts. The text calls 403 the counterweight. But when you actually read the balancing test, it feels like the whole scale is kind of rigged.
Oh, it is rigged. And that's quite literal. It's by design. The rule says a judge may exclude evidence, but only if its probative value is substantially outweighed by certain dangers.
Substantially. That's the word that does all the work there.
That's the entire game. It's not a 50-50 split. If the value of the evidence, how much it actually proves something, and the danger of that evidence are equal.
It gets in.
It gets in. The danger has to be significantly heavier to get it thrown out. The whole system is heavily biased toward letting the jury see everything.
Okay, so let's dig into those dangers.
Yeah.
The rule lists things like confusing the issues, wasting time, undue delay.
Right.
But the big one, the one that seemed to generate all the debate, is unfair prejudice.
And that distinction is just vital.
Because, and this is the part I think is the hardest to wrap your head around, isn't all good evidence prejudicial?
Of course.
I mean, if a prosecutor shows a video of a defendant robbing a bank, that is incredibly prejudicial. It's supposed to destroy their case.
100%. Effective evidence is supposed to hurt the other side. That's just prejudice. Rule 403 only steps in to block unfair prejudice.
So you're talking about evidence that tempts the jury into making a decision based on emotion or bias or just horror instead of logic.
Exactly. It's the difference between this proves he robbed the bank and, wow, this makes me hate him so much I want to convict him, regardless of the bank evidence.
It prevents a conviction based on character instead of conduct.
Precisely.
The old Chief case that was in the reading.
Yeah.
Just, it nailed this distinction perfectly. It's like the textbook example.
It really is. So walk us through it.
Okay, so you have a defendant. He's charged with being a felon in possession of a firearm. The prosecutor has to prove two things. One, he had a gun. Two, he's a convicted felon. So the defendant, old Chief, he basically says, okay, I admit it, I'm a felon, I'll stipulate to it, let's just talk about the gun.
Right.
But the prosecutor said, no, I want to tell the jury exactly what your previous felony was for.
And usually the prosecution gets to tell its story its own way. But this is where the Supreme Court stepped in using Rule 403.
And what was their reasoning?
Well, they said since the defendant admitted he was a felon, the probative value, the actual proof you get from hearing the nasty details of the old crime, it dropped to basically zero.
You don't need the details to prove it if he just admits it.
Exactly. The fact is established. But the unfair prejudice of hearing those awful details, that stayed sky high.
The jury might convict him just because they think he's a bad person from his past?
Not because he had a gun this time. So the details stayed out.
There's that fishnet analogy from the materials, and I think it visualizes this whole flow really well.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So imagine the evidence is a river of fish swimming toward a lake. The lake is the jury.
Right. And way upstream, you have the first net, relevance. That's Rule 401. And the mesh on that net is huge. Almost every fish gets through.
If a fish makes a fact even slightly more probable, it passes. But Rule 403? That's the final net, right at the mouth of the lake.
And the mesh here is a lot tighter. It's designed to catch the toxic fish.
The ones that are too confusing, too time-consuming.
Or unfairly prejudicial, yeah. The ones that might poison the whole lake.
But going back to that substantially outweighed standard, this final net it's still pretty loose, isn't it?
It has to be. It's a safety valve, not a dam. It's only there to catch the most dangerous stuff that threatens the fairness of the trial.
Which brings us, I think, to the final thought here. The rule says the judge may exclude the evidence. It's all discretionary.
And that's a massive amount of power to give one person.
It is. We're relying entirely on the judge to know the difference between a smoking gun and unfair prejudice.
A serious judgment call.
It is. So here's the question to leave you with. In a system that claims to be a government of laws, not of men, Rule 403 really does rely entirely on the subjective instinct of one person in a black robe.
So does that protect the jury?
Or does it just introduce a different kind of bias? Does it replace the jury's potential bias with the judge's own?
That's the deeper question.
Something to think about. Thanks for listening to this deep dive.